Australia is the world's largest island. Geographic separation over thousands of years resulted in 90% of the species found in Australia being endemic to this vast land. And for the locals, living here means living amongst some of the world's most dangerous animals. Some of these animals can kill instantly, others leave lasting injuries, and some can just inflict a nasty bite. In all, 72 animals can cause us damage. But which one tops the list of most dangerous? Our first featured animal is renowned the world over as one of the most feared creatures of the ocean. It's a vital apex predator that ensures the balance of its environment. However, when humans enter the equation, the balance shifts. There is never a plan to attack. In fact, an attack is a hit-and-miss affair, but when it strikes, it's brutal.
It started off just like any other day, just super excited to be going out there. My older brother Sam went out first. I was a little bit slow in putting my wetsuit on and getting ready, so Sam and Joe were already out there and I started paddling out. It was really nice just to be there before everyone else and to spend a day in the ocean, in the waves, with only 3 of us out. It was a really nice start to the day.
Zach Golbiowski was 15 at the time and had been hanging out to go surfing with his mate Joe. His brother had taken them to Wharton Bay, about an hour east of Esperance on the southern coast of Western Australia. For over 40 years, his family had been visiting this idyllic holiday spot during the summer months of December and January, staying at the local caravan park. But this day wasn't going to be like any other.
We hadn't been surfing for very long. We'd probably been out there maybe half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. I'd just got a wave and started to paddle back out when everything went super, super quiet. I knew something was up because it's such a surreal experience, and I guess those few seconds was just my body recognising what had just happened. And Sam came over and tried to put me on his little surfboard, and my bottom half of my body came out of the water and I could see the extent of what had happened.
Zach grew up in Esperance. He'd lived his life around the ocean. His older brothers were surfers, and he was keen to follow their path. Surfing and the freedom of the ocean are very much a part of his life. To experience the dangers that lurk beneath the surface was never on his radar.
My mind probably didn't know what was happening, my body didn't know what was happening, but when Sam came over and put me on his board and I could see the remainder of my leg sticking up in the air and blood, it was a horrible thing to see, but it was at that point that I knew that I'd definitely been attacked by a shark.
So where the great white had come in from the side attack had taken off one leg and the teeth had embedded in the other one. I mean, when the sharks are hitting, it's a lot of force, a lot of power, and those teeth are very razor sharp. They're made to just cut through flesh.
Great whites take about 15 to 20 years to mature, by which time they'll be roughly 3 to 3.5 meters long. At this stage, they'll start producing a couple of young every couple of years. This is a shark that can grow up to 6.5 meters long, which is a massively large animal, and at that size, the shark is likely to be around 70 years old.
So, these big sharks that are swimming around there now, they would still remember what was happening in the whaling days, where whaling was occurring on the beaches. And sometimes you talk to locals, they go, oh, we always see a great white off this beach. Oh, there was a whale carcass buried there, 20 years ago. And there would still be odour coming out through the sand from carcasses buried 20, 30 years ago. So it's no wonder the sharks would come into those kind of areas each year, just have a look around, see if there's another dead whale.
The most common prey that great whites are looking for is seals, turtles, or dolphins, and so the sharks are hunting right up against the coast, particularly in coastal areas where there are waves, where the visibility is small, where the prey lives, and of course, these are also the spots that people like to go surfing.
It's just a case of mistaken identity. They're not going out looking for people. What they're doing is looking for their natural prey. And a lot of people think great whites are oceanic sharks, but a lot of the tracking research, particularly the satellite tags these days, reveals that great whites are a coastal shark and they move long distances. So they'll migrate from South Australia all the way up to northern Western Australia, even into the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland.
So this places the great white around all but the top coastal regions of Australia. However, there are only about a couple of hundred of these animals on the east coast and on the west coast. The numbers aren't high, so the chances of being attacked are slim, but without doubt, the attacks are brutal.
So when the shark bit me, it was just above the knee. It managed to take my right leg off basically in one chunk. That's my two legs on the surfboard, and the shark's come from the side. The top of its jaws has grabbed my left leg and in the process completely taken my right leg off. The injuries to my left leg were quite bad as well and quite severe. My left leg was only really inches from being taken off at the end of the day. By the scars on my legs, you can see how close it was.
So close and so far from treatment, the shark was still circling while Sam was trying to rescue Zach.
So as soon as it happened, there was obviously commotion and splashing in the water. When I surfaced, I yelled out to Sam. Sam obviously needed to come and get me and save me. And
Joe ran to the car park to see if anyone else had arrived. There was too much to do on their own.
by this stage, I'm going in and out of consciousness. It felt like an eternity getting back into shore. But as soon as my head hit the sand and I could feel the sand underneath me, then that was the second hurdle out of the way and we were out of danger from the shark.
Joe had struck gold. A couple had just arrived to go fishing. They were able to drive their small station wagon onto the beach, and together they tried to figure out what to do. They needed to remain calm. They needed to think quickly. They needed to save Zach.
Sam managed to find an extension lead in the back of the car and tourniquet that around the remainder of my thigh to prevent blood loss. Quick thinking by everyone there, Sam putting the tourniquet around me and then wrapping up with whatever they could find, rags and shirts and a jumper. Put the back seats down and put me in the back of the car and started the drive to who knows where.
For Zach, the pain was starting to sink in. He remembers arriving at the caravan park only 5 minutes away. However, by then, he was having trouble breathing.
And I remember the caravan park owner, him coming out and the look on his face, he looked like he'd just seen a ghost. So I was okay, but I remember when I saw him, I thought, oh, he was looking at me like this guy doesn't have any chance at all.
Zach's wetsuit was cut through the middle to help him breathe. Contact had been made with the hospital. An ambulance was going to meet them on the hour-long trek to town. Plus, there was a nurse who lived nearby, so they picked her up on the way.
I remember at one point feeling completely calm. I had my arms behind my head. Sam was in the back of me and had my leg up, and I could see the extent of the injuries on my left leg. I could see muscle oozing out, and it was horrible. I was trying to survive the whole thing, and Joe and Sam and the couple that were around me as well, they were speaking positive to me and telling me everything was going to be okay.
When you think of a shark, it's like an underwater AWACS aircraft, from the military. It's a mega sensory machine. They've got one more sense than us, so they're able to detect electrical fields in the water. But they use all their different sensors at different ranges. So for a great white cruising up the coast, the first thing it's doing is listening for noise.
Sound travels through water hundreds of kilometers, and a shark can hear quite a few kilometers away. So if there's an animal struggling in the water, the shark will often head toward it. If there's a smell or odors in the water coming off, say, a seal colony, they're also onto it. They can detect one drop of scent in 10 billion parts of water. So these sharks can smell from kilometers away.
When they get closer to the prey, then they start to use their eyesight. Now, sharks can see a lot further than us underwater, sort of as a general rule of thumb, about twice as far.
They're looking for shapes in the water, and they're particularly looking for shapes that they're targeting. And once they've seen their prey, they'll come in looking for an attack.
We're talking about an animal hitting the prey sort of like 25, 30 kilometers an hour. They're trying to get in there fast, hit the prey, bite it, and let it go. So what they're doing is they're causing a massive trauma to the prey, because if you grab something like a seal, then the seal would thrash around and cause a lot of damage to the shark's mouth and the head where all the sensors are. They're just going for that fatal hit, then they'll back off, wait for it to bleed to death and come and feed upon it. The other sense that the sharks have is just before they go in for the bite, because their head is sensitive, they actually protect their eyeballs. So if the great white, the eyes actually roll back into the head, and at that last moment before the attack, they're blind.
They're now using their electrical sense. This is a very short-range sense that only works for a couple of meters, but it works impressively well.
And what the sharks have is a series of black dots all over their snout. And they're these little electrical receptors called the ampulla of Lorenzini. And That allows the sharks to detect bioelectric fields in the ocean. When we're in the ocean environment, around all living creatures there's a bioelectric field, and the shark can target in on these at the last moment of attack.
And at that moment, there's contact, and then there's taste. Sharks are really using their mouth as the final test to taste and feel what the prey is.
In a lot of cases when it's not their natural prey, like a surfboard or something like that, they'll hit it once, back off and think, oh, it's the wrong thing, and leave it. And just swim away from a mouthful of fiberglass. And also it tastes wrong as well.
However, when you've been hit, it certainly doesn't seem that simple. And it certainly doesn't feel as though the shark is just going to swim away.
Started to take off, and about 10 strokes into my paddle, it was just an almighty bang, just an absolute crash. I went up in the air, probably a metre or two. My friends tell me that when the shark came up, it lifted the ski out of the water about 2 or 3 metres and tipped me in.
Martin Kane was learning what it would feel like to come face to face with a great white off the Western Australian coast near Perth. A coastline that has seen many tragedies.
As I fell backwards, I could sort of see a shape, but I just didn't know, nothing made sense to me. My mind was going into this trip saying, gee, what was that? What was it, a boat? I didn't hear any motors, but it sounded like a car crash. The ski actually exploded because it's a sealed unit. When I surfaced in the water next to the shark, all I could see was my ski going all over the place.
Having a great white next to you, obsessed by something else, can buy a little time to work out your next move.
I had the ski in its mouth, and I was just shaking the hell out of it. So I basically stopped in the water. I said, no, that's it, I'm dead. There's no way I'm going to get back to shore. So I grabbed my paddle. From what I'd read in the papers, if you sort of smack a shark in the nose, it might go away. I'd straddle the water there for what felt like a lifetime, but it was still going up my ski.
Unfortunately, what does happen in a natural shark attack is with a shark coming in at high speed and hitting prey like that, it can cause a lot of damage to surfers and people on kayaks and things like that. They're just seeing a faint shadow on the surface and going up and having a go. And that's when they realise it's the wrong thing, and in most cases the shark will swim off.
In most cases they will, but the fear is overwhelming. Martin needs to be rescued. Zach is still trying to get to an ambulance. Richard has a few stories of his own to share, and we've yet to meet an adventurer who freedives with great whites. All of this to come later in the program. Animals are competitive by nature. They need to be to survive. So in keeping with the action, we're going to rank them according to just how dangerous they can be. We'll scrutinize each one, highlighting how they can affect your life, quite literally, allowing you to decide if you're game enough to get as close as some of our experts. Although we're going to hear more amazing stories from our experts and survivors, it's already clear the great white is going to dominate the pool of dangerous animals and claim its spot at number 1. It'll be hard to knock off, but putting its hat in the ring is an animal that's smaller in size than the tooth of a great white shark. It has an innocent-sounding name, but the mouse spider is the hidden danger lurking in Australian gardens. These ugly arachnids dig burrows and line them with spidery silk. They even weave a trapdoor. The problem for humans is their elaborate homes are often concealed in lawns and open ground, so beware if you're barefoot.
Mouse spiders are quite dangerous to humans. They contain a component in their venom that is very similar to that found in funnel web spiders.
The funnel web spider is particularly dangerous to children. Mouse spiders don't usually cause death, but their venom has real bite.
The venom has the potential to be lethal. There's been a number of reports of people having quite strange illnesses as a result of mouse spider bites. Generally, they don't inject a lot of venom though.
David Wilson has been studying spiders for more than a decade. He says mouse spiders are very aggressive and quick to rise to striking position when they feel threatened.
They have really strong fang apparatus, and frequently when they bite people, if they bite you through the fingernail, you have to have them surgically removed.
No one's quite sure how this spider got the name of mouse, but it seems to be linked to their deep burrows, which look a lot like a burrow or a tunnel that a mouse might dig. There are 8 species of mouse spider in Australia. They're found across the mainland, in forests, shrubland, and of course suburban backyards. Males are just 15 millimeters long. The females are much bigger, at 25 millimeters. Using their powerful jaws and venom, mouse spiders feed on ants, beetles, and even small lizards and frogs. Like so many of our dangerous animals, humans are accidental victims. We're usually bitten by the mouse spider when the males emerge from their burrows after the rains in early winter, when they're out on the prowl.
Generally, people get bitten by mouse spiders as an act of defence by the spider. The females live underground in sealed up web socks. Generally, bites happen with males who are out around looking for females.
The urge to procreate proves fatal. Like many spiders, after the liaison, the male dies. It is a potentially dangerous spider, but quick action will prevent any long-term consequences.
Treatment for mouse spider bites is similar to funnel web spider bites, which is the same treatment as snake bite. Compression bandage starting at the bite site and moving up the limb.
There have been no known deaths from mouse spiders, but their venom does have the potential to kill, so treat this creepy crawly with caution. Hairy, eerie, and unsettling, this small beast is going to creep into the arena at second. Although its fear factor is high, it's not even in the same league as the great white shark, which is going to hold its spot at number 1. But up for the challenge of taking on the best is an animal that pulls apart and puts itself back together again. The pain is immediate, an intense stinging sensation. You rush out of the water, you need treatment, but what has got you?
Some people react really badly to them, and it becomes a matter of how badly you're stung. Usually you tend to find the people that really react really badly haven't just been stung by one, they're blundered into about 15 or 20 of these things. So you end up with tentacles all over your body. You get a very high venom load out of that. And they're the people that show really bad effects.
Introducing the mysterious blue bottle jellyfish. But this isn't just one little critter. Incredibly, it's 4 animals, or polyps, grouped together.
You've got one polyp, for example, that we talk about, which is the float. And that's the animal at the top that blows up and that keeps everything suspended in the water. Then there's a series of animals that make up the tentacles. There's a series of animals that make up the stomach. There's another series of animals that make up the gonads, or the reproductives of the animal.
Being stung by such a complex creature is a big hit and miss affair. People react differently. The venom load is indiscriminate, and even if the colony may have come adrift, the tentacles can still sting whether attached or not. The blue bottle is like a large balloon with a hypodermic needle that fires into your skin at a massively fast rate, like a bullet from a gun. Once the tentacle hits you, millions of small stinging organelles shoot into your skin and deliver venom. However, very little is known as to what the venom does, other than it causing a huge burst of pain.
When you look at the stings from these guys, in the grand scheme of things, if you compare them to big box jellyfish, they're really not on the screen at all. They're right down the bottom end. The 2 or 3 deaths that have occurred have been overseas, been from very high venom loads, and they've gone through into cardiac arrest.
Whilst you're unlikely to die, the chances of being stung are almost certain. Blue bottles, also known as Portuguese man-o'-war, are found right around the Australian coastline. From the cold waters of the Southern Ocean to the tropical waters across the top. They can pretty much be found anywhere. Anywhere there's salt water, you'll almost certainly find a blue bottle at some time of the year. However, this is an elusive creature. Building a statistical profile presents many gaps.
We know that blue bottles are colonial animals, so it's basically a group of animals that get together. That's about all we know from these animals. We don't know, for example, how they breed. We don't really know where they come from. And we basically don't know much about them at all. One of the big problems with working with blue bottles is it's almost impossible to keep them alive in the lab. And we're not too sure why that is. We know these animals can be found offshore, but you've got to go a long way offshore to find large numbers of them. And then once the wind blows, they separate and go all over the place. So it becomes a really difficult animal to get a handle on, to work on.
The good news is that what is known is how to treat a sting. Historically, everybody used to put ice on the site. However, that myth has long been debunked. Hot water is the key. The venom from the blue bottles is heat labile, which means it can effectively be made inactive by heating it up.
We did some work many years ago on a beach in Australia here and showed quite nicely that if you were stung and you go for a hot shower, you can decrease the pain and you can decrease the time in which the pain occurs significantly, to probably about 50% of what you would normally happen. So heat, hot water, hot showers is the way to treat a blue bottle sting.
There have been reports over the years of people swallowing blue bottles or coming close, half in your mouth but able to spit it out in time. Stings usually result on the mouth, but if you do ingest one, flush the tentacles out of your system with cold water and seek medical help immediately.
Blue bottles, like just about every other animal on the planet, if you don't muck with them, they won't sting you. It's usually, the vast majority of people that are stung, it's an accident. The animal's happily fishing, it's got its tentacles in the water, you blunder into it. It can't tell whether or not you're a fish or a human, it stings you because it thinks you're a fish, and away you go.
A word of warning. Even if a blue bottle appears dead on the beach, leave it alone. You could still be stung if you touch it. Dead or alive, the blue bottle jellyfish can leave its mark, but not big enough to tackle the great white shark. It's going to nudge the mouse spider to third and claim its spot at number 2. A spot to behold in this lineup of dangerous animals. And also searching for its place to claim is an eclectic creature that could be the star of a sci-fi horror movie. Found right across the more arid parts of Australia is a fierce-looking beast that has more in common with science fiction than reality. It has an armor-plated body, giant claws, and most intimidating of all is its muscular tail finished off with a sharp spike. This is the Australian burrowing scorpion, one seriously equipped arachnid. It's large enough to fill the palm of a man's hand, but we certainly wouldn't recommend you do that, as you may get a nasty sting. Its tail is the perfectly designed offensive weapon that strikes out over its body on any unsuspecting prey.
You can get them up to probably about 12-15 centimetres long if you stretch them out. And they're actually quite stocky compared to a lot of other scorpions. So burrowing scorpions tend to have these really stocky pedipalps, these very thick-set claws.
The burrowing scorpion doesn't waste its time hunting around the desert searching for food. It hides out in the burrow, waiting for food to be home delivered.
They'll sit at the entrance of their burrows, and when something comes close enough, they'll rush out, grab it, drag it back to their burrow, bring the sting over their body, sting it until it's dead, and then take it down their burrow to feed on.
It feeds on many critters including cockroaches, beetles, worms, millipedes, centipedes, spiders, and even other scorpions. Generally, its prey will be half its size, but will tackle larger animals if needed. The burrowing scorpion is mainly a nocturnal animal, escaping the harsh Australian sunlight by day in its cooler, humid burrow.
Scorpions in the desert are living in environments that might get to the mid-40s during the day and sub-zero temperatures at night. So that burrow environment allows them to maintain constant temperature, constant humidity to avoid the worst of whatever might be happening up on the surface.
This curious creature is a down-under specialty.
Burrowing scorpions are actually only found in Australia, and they only occur in mostly arid regions. You don't get them in tropical rainforests or temperate rainforests. There are lots of different species of burrowing scorpions. We're aware of maybe about 80 new species across Australia, so it's one of those areas where we're still finding new species all the time.
Two of the burrowing scorpion species are the Flinders Ranger scorpion and the black rock or black desert scorpion. Very similar in many ways, very different in others. The one thing that they have in common is that they burrow.
Now these burrows don't go straight down like a lot of spider burrows do. They're actually spiraled, they're corkscrewed into the ground. And this is so that they can maintain a flat surface to walk up as they move from the bottom of the burrow up to the entrance.
Scientists are now putting the burrowing scorpion's venom to good use. The latest research shows that the venom assists with brain surgery. This fluorescent toxin is painted on brain tumors and so helps surgeons to detect the margin between healthy brain tissue and tumor cells. So whilst the burrowing scorpion could easily feature as a science fiction monster, it's also a science research hero. Many of our dangerous animals take a major role in much of the incredible medical research being performed in Australia. However, this isn't going to help the burrowing scorpions in the danger ranking. This stinging brute is going to crawl in below the mouse spider in 4th spot as we head back to our #1 ticket holder.
So shark crunched my ski with its jaws and the ski was just being minced around, and I thought, we have a problem, Houston. We really have a problem. I'm not going to make it back to shore. If this thing lets go, I'm finished.
Martin Kane was out for an early morning paddle with his mates at Mullaloo Beach in Perth, Western Australia.
We were probably 10 or 15 minutes into the paddle, and all the guys stopped to look at a whole pod of dolphins. And I thought, oh yeah, you know, just another dolphin. I just kept on going. And I would have been about 50 metres ahead of the pack. The sun was just rising, the water was shimmering, just absolutely ideal morning.
The piece shattered with the hit of the great white. Martin was still unsure what was going on, but when he surfaced, he was next to the shark.
It was just total acceptance in my mind that I was dead. I thought, this shark is going to come in and bite me in two, or it's going to take my legs off.
Survival mode had kicked in for everyone else. Rescuing Martin was the only focus.
My friend Dale came around, was coming in opposite me, and I screamed at him, get out of here, it's a shark. And he didn't take any notice of me. He paddled around the back of the shark. I started to swim away, threw my paddle at the shark. So, you know, you can have that.
His mates got Martin back to shore. He was staggering around, still in disbelief of what had just happened.
Suddenly, everything went quiet, and all I could see was this dorsal fin going around my ski. Just sort of like a lap of honour, you know? I thought, oh God, how lucky am I?
The shark would have been traveling at a rate of knots, around 40 kilometers an hour. Martin would have never seen it coming.
If it happened again, I'd be swimming you wouldn't see me for dust. But this was just a sort of acceptance that I was dead and I couldn't do anything about it. Just a strange sensation.
A great white can go sort of 80 to 100 kilometres in a day. The tracking data shows that these animals have memories. And so they go back to areas where they've successfully fed in the past. So they're very strategic predators, and they have a really good map and calendar built into their system. So they're not just out there blundering around, they're going to different areas for a reason, and it's all about food when it comes to sharks.
For Zach Golbiowski, he was just another prey item to the shark.
When I saw my leg and I saw that I'd been bitten by a shark, I thought of the Paralympics for some reason, and I remember thinking about athletes running with prosthetic legs, and I thought to myself, they seem to do okay. So I think by that stage, my body had obviously come to terms with what had happened.
Remaining amazingly calm helped to save Zach's life. By the time the paramedics attended to Zach, the attack was starting to take its toll. He had no doubt he would survive, but he had no painkillers. He'd lost a lot of blood.
It was a hard one for me. I had to try and stay positive with everyone else looking like they'd seen a ghost.
From Esperance, Zach was flown by the Royal Flying Doctor Service to Royal Perth Hospital in the capital of Western Australia, where they started surgery on his leg.
When I was in the back of the car on the way into Esperance, I remember telling my friend Joe to write on a bit of paper that, I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses and that I wouldn't be taking blood transfusions. So growing up, always being a witness, we've always known about this and we know the alternatives. We've got amazing doctors here in Australia, so they were more than happy to go along with it as well. I'm not really sure how much blood I lost, but the synthetic stuff they put in me seemed to obviously work, and I'm still here now, so there's proof that it works.
Zach had taken a big hit. He was in intensive care. The hospital staff weren't taking any risks with the possible infection from the shark.
I didn't speak for a week after it happened. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't speak. I was obviously trying to figure out what happened. I didn't eat anything for that week.
Zach was in hospital for a couple of weeks, rehabilitation for 3 months, learning to walk again, and basically a year in and out of treatment. At 15 years of age, he was starting to face a lot of new challenges.
I guess it's quite ironic because I need something to do to take my mind off the leg most of the time, and surfing's one of those things that I do. I've got the mentality that it's happened to me, so it shouldn't happen again. The chances are quite slim, hopefully. The ocean's something that I've always been around. It's played such a vital part in my life. Such a massive event happened in the ocean, so I think it's only natural that I'll be drawn to it. It's healthy, I enjoy surfing. It's the one time where I don't have to worry about putting on my prosthetic leg. It's all arms out in the ocean when you're surfing, so I love it.
In my opinion, great white sharks are not very harmful to humans. The number of incidences, you can probably count on one, maybe two hands per year, as compared to train accidents, car accidents, accidents with toasters, it's negligible.
William Winram has made his mark in the world freediving with great whites. For over 25 years, he's been researching sharks and their behavior. Humans aren't really what they're interested in, but they'll check you out.
There's plenty of aerial footage where you see great whites, you see people on the beach. There's no report of an attack or anything like that. They're curious. They're also dealing with having to hunt their food every day. They don't have supermarkets, we don't have labels, and the only way they know what we are is to taste us. That's why being vigilant when you're in their environment, looking out for them and spotting them before they get close enough to decide to take that taste test is important.
However, if you don't see the shark coming, there's no chance for negotiation. Zach and Martin were both in this situation, an attack out of nowhere. Martin was able to walk away, but for Zach, it was a different story.
About 2 days later, the fishermen were on the beach and were driving along and saw something in the distance washed up on the beach, and it actually was my leg. Yeah, I know, it's a big one. But yeah, so there was nothing that could be done by that stage, but that proves that sharks obviously don't like the taste of humans. That was a bit of a slap in the face, really. I mean, if the shark had just gone to all that effort of affecting my life that much, I at least think it should have had a meal out of it.
What's unique about the great white is its ability to switch on, its instinctual reaction to potential prey or potential food. For us working with them in the water, we're quite aware that more than any other shark, we have to be 100% on our A game at all times. There's no margin for making mistakes. You make a mistake, you could pay a heavy price. You know, we never forget that it's an apex predator.
Richard Fitzpatrick has had an extraordinary encounter that he can laugh about now. But at the time, the apex predator looked like winning the game.
In my early years, I was doing a lot of work on great whites, and I had a pole cam working off the back of a research boat, and we were throwing baits into the water and pulling the sharks in close so then I could film the sharks to get a visual identification. To see what I was filming, I actually had a little TV monitor strapped around on my chest.
A 5-meter great white swam past the boat while Richard was filming, and unbeknown to him, the shark took control of the research.
Video camera in the water gave off an amazing electrical signal. The shark just came up and ate it. But unfortunately, it was attached to me all around the neck, so when the shark turned around and swam off, it actually dragged me into the water with it. And so it swam down the side of the boat with me getting dragged through the water. So the guys in the boat actually caught my feet, hung on to me. It was a bit of a struggle and the shark spat the camera out. Sheer terror, it was frightening. And when I came off that trip, I actually came back and proposed to my girlfriend, who became my ex-wife. So I tell people, don't make a rash decision after a near-death experience.
It's agreed that the chance of an attack by a great white is small. However, it does happen, and it's not often a good story.
Know the area you're choosing to go in the water to surf. Not early in the morning, not late in the day when the sun is low on the horizon, and it depends on the location.
Staying away from high-risk areas where the fish are running, where the seals are breeding, where the turtles are breeding and stuff like that. It's just using common sense to stay out of high-risk locations at certain times.
You need to understand the species, you need to understand the area you're surfing and what the risks are. And it may not be a great white, it may be another species of shark.
I've never had any hard feelings towards the shark. When we go in the ocean, it's their domain. We go in there, we enjoy where they live, so.
The great white is locked in at number 1. It's tough, it can be nasty, and is known to be fatal. The arena is staying put as we introduce a small worm that you'll never want to encounter. They're beautiful, striking, colorful creatures. These worms bounce across coral like caterpillars of the deep, but those furry-looking spikes aren't as soft as they appear.
There's really no other group of worms that are quite as spiny as this, and that's why they're called fireworms.
The fireworm's world is tough, It lives on tropical reefs, teeming with life, but also potential predators. A worm makes a great snack for almost every passing carnivore, and that's why the fireworm is fighting back.
There's lots of things that would like to eat a nice juicy worm. Instead, they've developed these bristles, which are quite hard, all the way along their body. A passing fish or a large snail is not going to want to eat this because in order to get to the soft juicy body, they've got to get a mouthful of these spines.
And the fireworm's pretty appearance is also a danger sign. Attack and you're in for a mouthful of pain.
It's basically sending out warning signals. Leave me alone, leave me alone.
Unfortunately, the flashy fireworm also attracts inquisitive divers who don't just look, they touch.
I have actually witnessed perhaps slightly naive divers picking one of these up. Even though they were wearing thin gloves, the spines went through the neoprene gloves, and when they take their hands out, they're all swollen. They have really reacted to those spines and to the poison at the base.
Fireworm by name, fireworm by nature. Get a sting under your skin and it'll ignite a burning sensation. The bristles are a bit like bee stings. Some people react worse than others. For many, there's intense itching or numbness, painful but not serious. If you're allergic, it's a whole lot worse.
I have seen people, when they've taken their dive glove off, even though they thought, well, I can pick up an animal because I've got a dive glove off. No, you can't. I've actually seen their hands 2 or 3 times larger than their normal hand.
The fireworm is a polychaete, the most diverse and abundant of the worm groups, with around 20,000 species. For a large group of invertebrates, there is still a lot experts don't know about these worms, particularly where they live in the world and how they're related to each other. In Australia, fireworms can be found around the country on reef flats, but you're most likely to see them in warmer northern waters. Adults range in size from 5 to 35 centimeters. They're voracious carnivores, feeding on coral, anemones, and small crustaceans.
They basically can invert their mouth, and then they can basically attack to their prey. And there's some data that they actually secrete some enzymes. As soon as they catch their prey, they're starting to digest it, and then they can suck that sort of partially digested animal back into their gut. They're not catching fishes they swim past or anything like that. So basically they're trapping sedentary or fairly slow-moving organisms.
Luckily for humans, being slowly consumed by a fireworm is off the cards, but they're still out and about, ready to strike thanks to their hollow bristles that are loaded with poison produced by glands at the base of each spine.
This is why when you dive on the reef, on the Great Barrier Reef for instance, you'll see these things in the middle of the day just strolling around on top of the reef because nobody wants to eat them, so they're safe.
To stay safe, humans need to follow the rules of the animal kingdom. Don't touch. Those brittle bristles can break off in your skin and cause a nasty reaction that can last for days or even weeks.
If you're snorkeling, I mean basically the worms are brightly coloured, quite often large, that size, just swimming or just crawling, as it were, gliding over the surface. Keep your eyes open, just leave them alone.
The fireworm is to be avoided, but on the danger scale, it's not going to push any of our animals from their ranking. The fireworm is going in at number 5, leaving the rest settled in the arena. Our next animal to hit the spotlight was first released as a food source when Captain James Cook arrived in Australia in the late 1700s. It's already taken on the challenge to dominate the environment. Now it's going to tackle the danger list. The wild boar is an ancestor of the domestic pig, originally from much of Central Europe and Asia. Today, they are in extremely large numbers in Australia. Estimates range from 18 million to 25 million, so there are more wild boars than humans in Australia.
Pigs are pretty prolific breeders, yeah, they'll breed in this warm environment, good food and tucker and stuff, they'll breed 3 times a year. So yeah, they breed like rabbits.
Matt Kelman owns Carmore Plains in the Northern Territory. Almost every day he sees large groups of wild boars.
Carmore's over 100,000 acres, 42,000 hectares, but there's several thousand pigs and over 1,000 buffalo on the property. Yeah.
Carmore Plains is a nature lover's paradise with flocks of exotic birds like the jabiru and magpie geese. There are crocodiles, snakes, and large numbers of marsupials. It's a great place to see these unique Australian animals, but it's also where people can see one of the most damaging of introduced species to this wilderness. Evolved from the domestic pigs that were brought over with the new settlers, the wild boar has come a long way to now being an efficient survivor in the Australian bush. Wild boars live in groups called sounders. They typically contain around 20 animals. Boars are the only hoofed animals known to dig burrows. This is because they lack brown adipose tissue, therefore they are unable to protect themselves from the cold. The burrow assists in maintaining their body heat on cold nights. Boars are opportunistic omnivores. They prefer grain, but easily consume animals such as frogs, fish, reptiles, and small mammals. Wild boars are by no means like their domestic relatives. They can grow up to 900 pounds or 400 kilos and longer than a tall man. This large animal is capable of attack, but fortunately, it is usually against machine rather than people.
I've had pigs lift the quad bike up, at night time, going up the shed and a pig will attack the quad bike. We have had a few instances where a big boar has attacked the quad bike, but you're normally trying to chase him out of the homestead grounds, or he's digging up the lawn, so you go out in the quad bike and chase him. I've had a few boars come back and put their head under the front of the bike and lift the bike right up. So I've seen that a few times.
That's not to say they don't attack people. As long ago as 1899, wild boar attacks have been recorded. An attack on a young boy in Geraldton was reported in the local newspaper on the 20th of June, 1899. A young boy, Thomas Kirkup, was attacked by an enraged boar. He ran to a wire fence a short distance away, but as he tried to get through, the boar struck him on the back, ripping a 7-inch wound across his back. Matt Kelman has seen attacks over the years he has been in the far north, but it's usually when we put ourselves in harm's way. He works with far more dangerous animals like crocodiles and water buffalo, but even so, he is aware of the damage they can inflict on an unsuspecting walker.
People get attacked by pigs where they come across a wild boar that's asleep in some grass and they basically come right onto him, or they'll come onto a sow that's got a bunch of suckers, young piglets that she's defending in the same way. Pigs are more an unseen thing because they're smaller too. Someone will walk into a bunch of a thick patch of bush, and a boar or a sow will jump up and have a go at them. No, I think pigs are quite different behaviour. Pigs tend to do their own thing. Pigs are quite poor-sighted animals too. So if they spook away from humans, it's because they smelt you or heard a vehicle. It's not so much on the eyesight.
The wild boar has grown bigger and bolder than its ancestors, more than capable of goring a human to death. But fortunately, in most cases, these wild pigs much prefer to keep out of our way. They may prefer to run than attack, but if confronted, the wild boar is one mean beast. It's going in high, pushing itself in at number 2. The rest of the pack drop a spot, while the great white continues to outrank the troops. It's a bunch of bad animals featured in this program, and although their pain factor is high and you'll never want to meet them, the majority aren't going to infiltrate the current top 10. The state of play is going to line up with a new leader, but first, a minor shuffle to the field. The eastern brown snake, guader, and dugite are all members of the brown snake family, and together they're a dangerously lethal combination. So we're going to group them together. This will see the brown snake family looking incredibly formidable in 3rd spot. The rest of the field will be promoted up the deck by 2 positions, allowing the Sydney funnel-web spider to creep back in at number 9 and the water buffalo to storm into 10. However, it's a short-lived return to play for the water buffalo, as the great white is going to fast track straight to the top and dominate the field at number 1. With all of our Australian animals, there is a fear factor. But keep in mind, they're unlikely to harm you unless you're unlucky enough or foolish enough to get in their way. Be cautious, take note of the warnings, and show respect as we count down the list of 72 dangerous animals Australia.